Morning, coaches, and welcome to Mastermind Monday. Great to have you joining me today. As always, I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to spend working on your business, making sure that you're getting better results for your players, better results for your facility, and making sure that you're getting the work-life balance that you desire. So today, I'm super excited to talk about the opportunity to make lasting change in our players. And so as always, Monday Mastermind, I suggest you have a pen, a piece of paper, an iPad, whatever you take notes on, please make sure to take notes, because the biggest thing is taking notes and then taking action. Because remember, you can just sit here, listen in, that's great, but the biggest thing to make change is actually to take action. And we're going to talk about that lasting change today. So I'm going to start this one today with a little bit of a story that I think we've all gone through as coaches, where you have a student. I specifically remember this student and thinking at the end of the lesson just how well I'd done. And we'd had it was about probably maybe our third or fourth coaching session that they'd been out to. And I felt truly like this person had it. They absolutely knew what I was talking about and they got it. And I remember thinking they're going to play great. I'm looking forward to hearing their scores. And that following Monday, they shot about 10 strokes higher than they did before they came to see me. And I just thought to myself, where was the disconnect? What happened? How did I go ahead and take this person from being, a sort of a, mid-90s shooter to playing great alongside me, shooting in the mid-80s, to going out and not even breaking 100 in a tournament? And I think we've all been there, right? That feeling of like, I thought they understood it. And then realizing and humbling ourselves to realize, okay, maybe they didn't get it. And so today what I want to do is dive into my experiences with helping players improve and starting to understand, like, what are some of the key characteristics and tools that we can use to ensure that they get lasting change. So as always, I love to start off with a question. So make sure to open up your chat box. And I want to hear from each and every one of you, what do you believe makes lasting change? So I'm going to just go ahead and say hi here in the text box. Throw it in there. I've got some examples or some things that you can choose from, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Some of the ones that you might think about might be, practice and repetition. Obviously, that builds habits, that builds change. Commitment to the process. That's a vital one, I believe. What else? Relationships from Chris Clemens. Really, I like that one. Having a good coach, having a coach that's going to take you on that journey. Chad Fina, building trust. Yeah, absolutely. Come on, pour them out. I mean, there's no wrong answer here, right? This is all about us as coaches today coming together and learning from each other and taking, from each other what we've learned and then going and applying that to our own students. So let's see, follow up. Yeah, that's a great one, Chris. Understanding the student's motivation. Yep, absolutely. Long-term game plan, Blake. I love that one. Keep them coming. Let's see. Come on. I know it's early. It's not even early for me. It's 9 a.m. It's only early if you're in Australia, and it's tomorrow. Long-term game plan. Let's see a few more. Billy, understand what they are doing now, what they want to do instead, and how to make the change. Yeah, I like that. Lasting change comes from intentional, purposeful practice. Great job, Jim Estes. Brian Jones, keeping the game plan. Fantastic. So yeah, keep those coming and make sure to keep them coming throughout as we ask questions through this. So, and I believe all of these to be right. And what I want to do today is just sort of talk to you about what my experience has been and maybe chime in and get some of your feedbacks on these three different tools that I might suggest that we use. So to start with, the first one that I feel is super important, and I think it's really the base fundamental for me. And I think if we relate this to your businesses and how you coach, you're going to see the same. So the first thing to me is literacy. Okay, now you guys have all and gals have seen my spelling, and when it comes to being a little bit dyslexic and struggling there, okay, I may not be the best one to be talking about this, but what I mean is that I've got to give my players a language. And I think that all of us, as we learn the game of golf, we understand, face closed, face open, swing path. We start to understand how to communicate that, right? And understand why that affects the ball. So we built our literacy, but I think the first building block is the language that we're going to create, okay, to make sure that we can get clarity for our players. And I think this is like so vitally important because I'm sure that you've had the experience, right, in the lesson where you'll ask somebody, hey, why did you slice that? And they're like, because I lifted my head up or I fell back. And you're like, oh, okay, no, but why did the ball slice? Oh, because my right elbow wasn't in the right place. And what there is a complete disconnect, right? There's not a language for you to use. So for any of you that are heavily into biomechanics and understand all of the ground forces and stuff like that, that language. My question to you is, have you simplified it down and have you got it into your students' hands? Do they understand it so they can actually speak that language to you? For many of you, maybe you use TPI and there are certain words that you use for that. I know for me with the scoring method, my focus is very much behind helping people to shoot lower scores. And so I'll give you an example, for me, it's, do they understand what a good miss is? Because when I'm out on the golf course with them and they hit one and they skank it down fairway and it's a horrible, feel to it and it's cutting to the right and it rolls into the right rough and I say, great miss. I've got to make sure they understand when I say great miss, I didn't say good shot. That was a horrible ball strike and it wasn't what you wanted, but guess what? It was a great miss. It's in play. You're in position to score. So I think that one of the things that we miss out on sometimes is we assume that our players just know this stuff, but very quickly you start to understand that they don't. And that was, for me, is the biggest part was I've got to start to put together a language for my players that I'm going to use and all my students are going to use to make sure that they can communicate with me so I understand what they mean when they come off the round and they say, I had a terrible day. What do you mean you had a terrible day? I want to know, how many times did it take you to get in the scoring zone? How many times did it take you to get down in the scoring zone? And how many putts did you have? Like, I need that language, that data, so I can make change for you. Because when they talk in emotions, like, I suck, I'm terrible, what does that mean? Does that mean the ball's starting right? Does it mean it's starting left? Are you topping it? Are you chunking it? So what I challenge you to all do here is start to think about, what are the words that if I spoke to every one of your students and I said to you, look, talk to me about Taylor, okay? Like, what are the words that he used? What are some of the lingo that he always is using around you as players? We should be able to hear that come out clearly every single time. Like, for me, it's, getting into the scoring zone, right? It's, having a good miss, knowing what short-siding is. Like, honestly, if you asked your students right now, hey, did you short-side it on that hole? Would they even know what that means? Because if you're going to focus on scoring, your language would be very different than if you're focused on, say, biomechanics and the golf swing. And there's no right or wrong here. I'm just saying, are we giving our students a language? So I want to challenge all of you right here on one thing, okay? In the chat box, I want you to see if you can go ahead, who can do it as quick as possible, get anything, go ahead and explain to me, right? What is that right there? So explain to me what it is. Who's the first person that's going to get it correct? I'm seeing nothing in the chat box right now. It is Braille, correct? Yep. Tom Harris, Brian Jones. I like it. It's Braille. Okay. So we at least know it's a language. Right now, go ahead and tell me what it says. I'm waiting. Give it a shot. It says Ross is a great golfer. Yes, that's exactly what it says. No idea, Brian Jones. Come on, let's see it, everybody. Who's going to get it first? So I want you to think about this as you're looking at these dots. This is what it feels like to our students sometimes. They're not going to tell us this because they're too embarrassed because they have a $4,000 set of golf clubs. They've been playing for 7 years. They've taken thousands of dollars worth of lessons, and they don't want to tell you that they don't actually know because they say, oh, I'm coming over the top. But they don't really even understand, say, swing pass and club face, and they don't even understand what it is. And so they just want to, yeah, it's Braille, I get it, let's move on to the next piece. So come on, is anybody going to get it? I'm going to give you a hint. Count how many characters are there, and it might be able to give you a hint of what it says. So how many characters do you think there are there, and what that might relate to? Is anybody going to get it? Come on, Stefan. Come on, Jimmy. Yes, there's Brian. Come on, David. There's a whole bunch of you there. Because this is the confusion, right? This is how difficult it is. But is anyone going to give it a shot? Joel Suggs, way to go, my man, right there, the alphabet. I mean, look at that, how that changes when I put that in front of you. All I had to do was make that one click. And now you could go ahead and start to form, even without knowing Braille, you could form sentences. If I took 4 dots, those 4 squared, that's a G, and then an O, I could do that, and then an L is 3 down in a row, and then an F is 2, 1 up and 1 to the right. So I can spell golf. I could then start to put sentences together. I could go ahead and then actually start to write, a paragraph, and then a book, and then a novel, and then poetry. And so this idea of literacy is we have got to help our players, whatever your strongest beliefs are, whatever your coaching, focus is, if it's the body, or if it's the mind, or if it's scoring, or if it's club fitting, we have got to make sure that we make it that we can get the letters put together so they can start to form words, that they can form sentences, and they can grow from there. So only because of Will's hint to us, hey, yeah, but Joel, that was really good that you actually went ahead and counted it and put it together. So this first idea is that where are we with our literacy? Okay, so I'm going to pick on someone right now. Chad Feener, I'm going to pick on you. Where would you say your fellow Canadian, there you go. What would you say, Chad, as far as your students being able to talk the same language? If it's the parents of your juniors, do they know, it's making champions in golf and life? Or what would you say, how are you doing so far on getting your students literate?
I think I first start with just giving them a voice and having a conversation. I don't try and show off with fancy terminology, that kind of thing. I always, one thing that I've learned with RGX is learning how to listen. Dan Boonby sometimes says that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Yeah. So listening and honestly, giving them a voice has worked really well for me. Just sometimes I just want somebody to talk to. Sometimes us as golf professionals think we might know too much, and we might show off maybe a little bit, and that kind of deters or it's not very attractive to most customers. So being humble, listening, it goes a long way.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying there, Chad. And I would say that if you really start to think about this today, Chad, and take notes on it for all of you, is that, just imagine that lesson, right? I do it all the time where someone really does not know anything about ball flight. They don't understand why the ball's starting to the right and slicing to the right. And you just get them on the range and you get a tennis racket out and you just show them, look, if I swing the club generally this direction, we're not talking TrackMan stuff like in technical, we just say, if I swing it this direction, the ball's going to tend to start that way. And if the face is opening through impact, it's going to tend to get the ball to slice that way. And you start to give that to them and you show them the opposite. And you start to show them, look, if you just go ahead and have the face closed, who cares? You set up to address, have it hooded closed, and I want you to go through and the ball actually hooks for them. They've never hooked it before. It's literally like they saw A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they're like, oh my goodness, like I've never got this before. This has never made sense to me. I didn't understand why this happened to me, or why I got so frustrated on the golf course, or why I was so bad at chipping. And so really, as we do this, as you start to teach them these fundamentals that we know, it's vital that we explain it to them in a way that they could explain it to another person, because then that really means they understand it. So to me, this first concept is literacy. It's coming up with a language and defining that language and starting to share that. And I would say for every one of you, you already do this. I would just tell you to go deeper and see if your students, almost if you could quiz them on what those words mean and why they're so important in golf. So the second thing I would dive into here for me was this experience of allowing my students to fail. I suppose is the best way to say it, is really allowing the aha moments to happen. And I think like when we first start off teaching, I know when I was an instructor and I was on the range giving one-on-one lessons, it's like I always felt like I had to give them the answer. Like if they didn't get it within about 4 seconds, I had to give them the answer. And it was only when I started coaching and I would have 16 people on the golf course and I didn't have time to go ahead and fix them, right? Because I'm driving from group to group to group, that I realized that the more powerful experience was them going, aha, I totally get it. Like I learned that and it makes sense to me. And the way I wrote this down was allowing your students to own it, not just learn it. And I think, for me, I could give you an example of, we were on the putting green one day. I had a player, his name was Bob, and I remember he was missing putt after putt after putt, and his mindset was pretty negative for the day, and it was starting to get to me. And it got to the point where I got so frustrated with him, I said, right, everybody stay here. I'm getting in a golf cart. I left all my students on the putting green, put him in a golf cart, got on the first tee, and I told him, right, go ahead and hit it out of bounds. And he ripped it straight out of bounds. And I said, right, now this one, thin it over the green. And he thinned it over the green. And then the next one, I put him in the bunker, and I said, leave it in the bunker. And he left it in the bunker. And the next one, and for 3 holes, all I did was tell him to hit the wrong shots. I told him to hit all the bad shots he possibly could, and he executed every single one of them. And I asked him, I looked him right in the face, and I said, so what's the difference? And you could just see his brain. He's like, Will, anytime I actually believe and have confidence that I'm going to hit a shot, I can do that. And I've got to take ownership in this. Now, I'm leaving out some of the explicit words that I said to him and how I put it to him. But for years after that, I've known this guy for a long, long time. He told me, well, that day changed my life because it was the first time someone actually allowed me to hit all the terrible shots that were already going on in my head, which I already knew I was going to hit and why I was getting so frustrated. And when you allowed me to do it, I then decided I have a choice. I could decide to try and hit it down the fairway because the ball doesn't know, the club doesn't know, the fairway doesn't know if it's a good or a bad shot, only I do. And so it was allowing him to have that aha moment. And so what I would challenge you all to do is be clear on what are some of the best aha moments that you have. Like what are the games or the tools that you can do to get someone to go, oh my goodness, this totally shifts the way I'm going to play the game of golf. Now I'm going to give you an example here. A lot of you have technology, and I think it relates so well to getting out on the golf course. Because you'll have that player who's at 150 and they're like, is it a 7 or is it an 8? I just don't know. And they're backing off a bit. And then they end up chunking the 8 40 yards short of the green. Well, if you've ever gone on, your piece of technology, TrackMan, FlightScope, GC Quad, whatever it may be, and you've had them hit 10 7-irons and 10 8-irons, and you overlay them together, and the ones that they bladed are actually their 8-iron is longer than their 7-iron, and the 7-iron they chunked is shorter than their 8-iron, and they put them together, and there's absolutely no difference pretty much between the 20 golf shots, but maybe 2 yards, and you show them that, and you get on the golf course, and the next time they get stuck, you go, well, it doesn't really matter whether it's a 7 or 8, just put a good golf swing on it. It shifts the way they're thinking because they've got stuck and locked into, is it this 140 club or this 150 club, when realistically, actually, it's really a 135 club to a 155 club, depending on how you hit it between those 2 clubs. So it's things like that that can really make the change for you when you actually decide, look, what am I going to do? So again, the aha moment is about finding little tools that you can use to get someone to see something in a different light. So I'm going to bring up a photo here. Some of you may have seen it before, but I want you to go ahead and tell me truthfully, what can you see inside of this, of what I'm going to post in here, and type it up in the box. Okay, so just the first thing you see, tell me the truth. All right. Many of you have seen this one before, but what can you see? Go ahead and type it in the box. Let's see it. Okay. Chad, you see an old lady. Taylor, you see a woman. Okay, keep going. Let's see everybody else. Well, a woman looking left at Chad Feeney, a woman, old lady, and a young lady, right? Seen it before. There you go, Ryan and Young. So everybody, do you see 2 different women inside of there? Can you see 2 different ladies inside of there? Just give me a thumbs. Tell me no if you can't, because I would love to hear from someone who can't see it, right? Because this is the point of an aha moment, right? So Chad Feeney, you can't see 2. What can you see, Chad? Go ahead and unmute. What can you see? The old lady or the young lady?
I see looks like an older lady with like a bonnet on, some hair sticking up to the top, wearing a fur coat.
Okay, perfect. Now, who can see the young lady and can explain it to Chad? Chad, can you see a young lady inside of that? Can anybody see old lady, not young lady for Billy? Okay. Who can see the young lady? So think of it this way. There's a young lady looking to the left. Well, sorry, for us, it's looking to the right here. Her nose and her eyelash is off to the left. You're looking at her ear and you're seeing her neck and her jawline right here. So her jawline is below her ear right here, and she's looking off to the right. Can everybody see? Chad, can you see that? Oh, hold on. Can you see that? Can you see my pointer on my screen or not?
Yeah.
You see her nose here and her eyelash. This is her jawline right here. This is her ear. That's looking that way?
Yeah, I got it now.
Okay, does everyone see that? So, I mean, everybody, a lot of you've seen this before, but my point being is, can you get out there and have people have that aha moment, right? Where they see it and they go, I've never seen that before. It didn't make sense to me before, because so often they've been taught it, they've been told it, they've read it, and they've watched it, but do they really know that it's actually more effective for them to take a hybrid off the tee box for the entire round than it is their driver ever, because where they're at their game of golf? They've read golf's not a game of perfect. They know they shouldn't hit a driver on this hole, but they still do. Guess what? They haven't seen the young lady yet, right? They haven't made it to a point where they're like, no, I own it. And they become this completely different person. Like, no, I love hitting hybrid off. My friends get noise the life out of them. And I put hybrid down the fairway every single time until I get to the 2 open par 5s. And then I play it that way. And you sort of see this in complete shift. And the biggest thing about it now is that, Chad, you will then go and explain this to other people. No, you can see a jaw right here and it does this. And it's like, because you've learned it and you actually now own it, it's a completely different experience. And so this is a challenge I would have for you guys, is like, write them down on paper. I mean, there's so many different ones, right? But short-sided versus long side. Have 3 golf balls dropped on the short side of the hole and 3 way away from the hole dropped on that side, and have them get up and down 3 times. And pretty much every single time, they'll blade one of them to where the chip is here. They'll leave one short side and leave one about 30 feet. And this one, they can bump with a hybrid, and they get up and down twice, and they get 1 3. And this one, they get 2 3s and a 4. And so you start to show them just how powerful, understanding where to place your golf ball is, or where to miss your golf ball. So I would challenge you to start writing down, what are the games that you can do on the golf course? How can you use your technology? How can you prove to them and help them to start to understand, like, where they actually own it? So I'll open it up to anybody else. Any specific ones? I might pick on Jimmy Estes. Jimmy, you're out there playing a lot. You're a great player. Is there any one that you would say is like just an eye-opener for your students?
Well, of the 10 keys to scoring, I think short siding is often neglected. I like the exercise. Now, it's not always easy to do if you're on a busy golf course, but if you have access to a course where you can take the pins out of the green and just have them play the hole and not think about, flags,
yes,
it gives them a whole different perspective on hitting a green, because typically they miss the green because they're trying to hit it in a quadrant of the green they got no business hitting it. And so if you said to them, hey, what's the average distance a professional hits the ball from the flag from 150 yards, and you told them 30 feet, they probably would never aim at another flag again. But getting them to actually do that by taking flags out is actually the way to do it, because that they're actively learning that, hey, I've got a lot of green over here to the right or to the left of the flag that I should not even consider aiming at any flag ever. So
I love it. And I think that's really powerful as well, Jim, because when you actually tell them that where I learned that from was Jack Nicklaus's dad used to walk ahead of him, take the flag sticks out and tell him to go to the middle of the green, right? One of the best golfers probably of all time, right? And so you have them play that game out on the golf course, and they're so mad to begin with. Well, who left the flag stick out? The greenkeeper. You're like, well, where do you think you could aim? Seeing that your 7-iron just got bladed over the last green, and then your 8-iron you chunked 40 yards short. It's like, maybe just the middle of the green. And then they go for the middle of the green and still miss the green. And it's like, if you can't hit the middle of the green, why would you aim for a touch flag stick by a bunker? So it's fun. And I mean, I know sometimes I'm kidding and joking around, but it is, because you're helping them to have those aha moments, because you see it so blatant. How can you not see the young lady? But there's a young lady there. Until they see it, they don't see it. So you've got to get creative and help them to understand it. So the third and final thing that I'm going to talk about here is what I call the 3 C's. And I think this is what a lot of you talked about as we went into the chat today. And I asked, how do you get lasting change? And so for me, it really comes down to these 3 key areas, right? So you've had the aha moment, you've made them literally understand. But the first thing is you've got to compete. Right? You've got to find a way to get them out of the stinking thinking, right? And where they're overthinking and they're analyzing, and get them to compete and just get that grit back into their game, where they're like, look, I'm just going to get it done. I'm going to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I think a lot of times we don't have that space, right? Because we're in a one-on-one lesson and you're like, okay, hit another shot and we'll do a combine on TrackMan. Those are awesome. But you get 2 or 3 people doing it and there's a little bit of banter going on. Now you start to find that they're doing it in the situation they actually have to do it. Right? The whole concept of the army, the whole concept of the military, I mean, you train so hard in such tough conditions that you're hoping when you actually get to where you need to be, it's not as hard as you've actually trained it. And so I think that creating competitions, having leaderboards, putting scores up to it, putting metrics up to it, doing combines, finding a way that they can track themselves and measure themselves against each other and against themselves is vitally important to actual lasting change, where someone will continue to do it because it works better under pressure to hit a hybrid off this G-Box than it does a driver, and I'm competing and I want to win. That's where you're actually going to make the change. I think the second thing you get there is the community, right? I mean, community is so vitally important, right? Because you're all going to speak the same language. You're all tracking the same stats. You're all understanding it. So you're pushing each other and, sometimes going each other and having that banter. And I think it's so vital that you have that, because if not, then it makes it different. Everyone's separated, right? No one's coming together and challenging you when you get off track and pull that driver, and they kind of laugh at you like, well, didn't you want to get in the scoring zone? Oh, okay, yeah. So there's peer-to-peer coaching. And I think this is one of the ones that, to me, you're definitely afraid of, right? You go out for a playing lesson with 4 people and one of the guys starts saying to one of the ladies, well, you're aiming left and, you really should swing further downhill on this. And you're like, no, I don't want that type of coaching. What I want to see is that peer-to-peer, they're saying, well, what does it take just to get inside the 100? Why would you? And you walk over and you hear them coaching each other on the shot. Like, look, why don't you just pitch it out to the 100? Get a check mark. Now they're literate because they're coaching, right, another student in the language that you want them to. And so I think that sometimes for pros is really like, I don't want my students teaching each other. Absolutely. I do not want them working on each other's technique. But when it comes to holding them accountable to, I suppose you could hit driver, but I know I can get to the 100-yard mark with 2 6-irons and I want to get the check and I want to beat you today anyway. So there's that sort of banter and that camaraderie. And so for me, this is where if you want lasting change for your players and you want your players to stay around, this is where you build community. This is where you create this. And I look at something like CrossFit, and again, I haven't done that, but I've been to a buddy's box and I've seen it before and I know a little bit about it. But they've got workout of the day. You can look at everybody in the entire world who's ever done that workout that day and see where you compare to them. You've got competition, you've got community, you're there coaching each other, pushing each other on, inspiring each other to hit your goals. And to me, that's like the most crucial part of being a great coach, is you've got to build that environment for them. So this is just a few weeks ago. This is up at Bandon Dunes. We go up every year. There's 16 of us up there with my coaches. And, we're all up there competing and, coaching in a way of, at the end of the day, hey, well, nice playing. How many times did you get in the scoring zone? Things like that. Like we're using the same language. We're giving each other banter. We're having a great time. And I would just challenge every one of you to just think about, look, if you're not playing golf, get back out there with your players. It doesn't have to be with 16 guys at a different golf course. It can be 18 holes on a Saturday just with the men's club. Just get back out there and start to get that connection, that community. It's so vital, because that's where they get to go ahead and actually use the language. They get to use their aha moments and prove it to each other and themselves how they're playing. So as always, everybody, I want to stay on time and be respectful of your time. For those of you who have not started a journey yet with RGX, please hop on a call with us. Let's find out where you're at, where you want to get to. Let us help you achieve your goals. For all of you inside the RGX community, make sure to get on your calls, make sure to reach out to your mentors. And most importantly today, go and implement this stuff. Just spend some time writing it down, getting it on paper, and then go and share it with one of your students, or share it with multiple students, and make sure you're implementing this. So as always, everybody, I greatly appreciate it. Have an amazing week, and thanks for spending the time with us. See ya.